Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is Joe and Mac for the Nintendo Game Boy, brought to us by Data East. This version of Joe and Mac has some limitations compared to other ports, but they still did a okay job of bringing this game over to the handheld system. In Joe and Mac, we get to play as, well, Joe, I assume. Mac is not playable, there's no two-player option or anything like that. And you're saving the girlfriends from an evil giant dinosaur, I guess? They get chased off at the beginning of the game, and you're going off to get them. The controls are simple in the game, being able to just jump and throw your weapon. You could switch them in the options if you wanted to do that before the game started. You can also hold up and jump in order to do a big jump, which we'll use a lot throughout the game to get to higher platforms, as well as acrobat our way over certain enemies. This version of the game isn't my particular favorite by any means. Probably the SNES version is the one that I played the most and the one I've enjoyed the most over the years. The NES version, which is similar to the Game Boy version here, isn't too bad either. Here we reach the end of level number 1. We're going to take on the giant dinosaur here. We're going to get close, do little short jumps up into the air. Don't hold up when you jump, so you don't jump directly into the mouth. And fire out the axes upwards every time you do the little jump. It won't take too many hits in order to take down the dinosaur, and we're moving on to level 2. One of the big differences with this version is there isn't any kind of selectable path or different levels to choose from like there are in some. That's the same with the NES one, it's a linear experience. There also isn't multiple endings in this version, it's just the one ending, which isn't that spectacular, but at least there is something. When we reach the open area, just keep going to the right, jumping over a couple of dinosaurs. You may have to take out one of the dinos before dealing with the giant plant here at the end. For the giant plant, we're going to stun lock it by attacking it at the right time. Each interval, it only takes a second or so. When you get your axe there, it'll just immediately negate its attack. Sometimes the plant will just kind of stick its tongue out for a few seconds. You can't hurt it during this, you just gotta wait for it to stop and then go right back into the stun lock. Once in a while, the seeds may get through, destroy the little plant it creates, and then focus right back on the plant. Pretty simple fight, and we're moving on to level 3. For level number 3, we're going to start climbing, doing the big up jumps in order to get a pretty good distance. You can't go higher than the top of the screen, you'll just end up hitting the top there. Work your way jump by jump up, watching out for a few enemies. Trying to conserve a little bit of health so we have some for the boss fight, though it can be a little bit difficult to do so. Here we reach the top, deal with this little dino before a pterodactyl shows up for the next boss fight. For this boss, you have to attack like the wing. It's a little bit weird where you have to hit it. The pterodactyl will bring eggs on the screen and drop little pterodactyls because of it. You can take those out and then focus back on the main pterodactyl. Don't get hit by the big pterodactyl if possible, just because of the amount of damage it ends up doing, as you can see. But that can be really hard to avoid just because it has a pretty big wingspan, and hit detection as far as the box that will actually hit you isn't the greatest, and a lot of times with the bosses and enemies in the game, you're going to get hit, and honestly, you should have been able to avoid that damage. With that boss taken care of, we're moving on to level number 4. Level 4 is a simple stage. We're going to get the wheel at the beginning of it, and this is just one of the other weapons you can use. We also have a boomerang we'll use a little bit in the game. There are some pits and stuff throughout this level. Just be careful making your jumps. When these are pulled down, you can end up getting hurt when they're all the way down, so be very careful not to jump on them then. Watch out for the giant rock at the end of the level, and that's it. That's the end of stage number 4. No boss for this level. For the next stage, watch out for the giant fire pillars that will come spewing upwards. Wait for them to dissipate back down before attempting to make the jumps. I'm going to drop down here and pick up the boomerang. It's not necessarily the best weapon just because it does miss a lot, but it's fun to use for sure. You also have a pretty good distance reaching with it, so you can hit enemies. For the next boss, you have this giant ankylosaurus that's going to appear. We're going to wait for it to get all the way on screen. It's going to like unfurl, and you'll be able to attack it. It'll then turn back into a big ball and roll to the left. Come back and roll all the way over to the right, come back to the left, and stop again where you'll be able to finally hit it. And that's all it does. It just keeps repeating this pattern over and over again. So, it's one of those fights that does take a little bit of time just because you don't have that much opportunity to actually land hits against it. But as long as you're careful, it's not too difficult. When you do your big jump over it though, make sure that you are able to clear it and there's enough space between you and him when attempting to make the jump over, or else you will take damage, and it doesn't take a whole lot in this fight to end up losing it. After a pretty lengthy fight, we're finally able to deliver enough attacks to defeat the boss. Using the wheel can go a little bit faster. But once it's done, we're moving on to level 6. Level 6 is pretty short for the stage. In fact, a lot of the levels in this game you noticed are short, but this one is particularly short. Yep, we're already at the end of the level. That's it. We take on the dinosaur, and then we get ready for the boss fight against the woolly mammoth. Sometimes the dinosaur ends up hitting me and stays on screen, causing me to have some problems at the beginning of this fight. The mammoth battle in general isn't too bad though, you just have to be able to dodge the rocks. Stay on the far left side, don't get too close. And as long as you don't get too close and can make sure you get underneath the rocks when they come crashing down, you should have no problem being able to finish off this giant woolly mammoth and move on to the next level. Next up, you have these enemies overhead that are going to throw down items, spikes down towards you. You can run underneath the ones coming from the right, but when they're coming from behind you, it's harder to dodge them, and you need to walk towards them just a step or so that you can actually avoid getting hit by them. Also, throughout this level is electricity. Lightning is crashing down from the skies, and you have to make sure, of course, you don't get hit by that. A lot of this level is just running to the right through a big open space, as you can see. As we reach the end here, time for the next boss fight, and it's a rematch against the pterodactyl. The same strategy that we did the first time, we're going to do the second time against the pterodactyl. This time, though, we have boomerangs, not that that makes any difference whatsoever. The fight isn't any more challenging, nothing really is new at it, except for instead of an egg being dropped to bring out a little pterodactyl is consistently coming out. So you have to stop and throw a boomerang or weapon at it every once in a while to make sure you handle the little one, just so you don't get run into. It may take a while, but we're able to finally best this pterodactyl boss, and we're moving on to the next level. We have 2 stages left to go here. The first one's this giant boneyard that we're going to be running through. If you jump right here, you can get this caveman to throw his rock to the left. That way he doesn't throw it down, potentially hitting you. Try to get the other one to do it, or else just bait him to throw it down so you can avoid getting hit. A lot of the area is pretty open, just like the previous stage, that we're just going to kind of run through. Defeating enemies, getting random fruit, you can rebuild up that health meter, which could be useful before some of the fights. It's up to you how much health or whatever you want to try to get. For this fight, we have this little dinosaur being spit out of the mouth of the giant bone dinosaur. All I do is jump back and forth over this tiny dinosaur, consistently throwing my boomerangs at the big one. You can take out the little dinosaur, but as soon as you do, next time he comes back on screen, he's going to drop off another one that potentially could just run into you by coming out the way it does. I find it a little bit more manageable a lot of times to just have it stay alive on the bottom and just me jumping over it. Eventually I end up destroying the little dinosaur anyway, and here comes another one to join right into the fray. That one ran off screen though, which was interesting, and then I'm able to defeat the boss with just the last few hits. Level number 9 is the final level of the game. We battle through the inside of this dinosaur and end up getting to the heart as the final boss. A lot of enemies are going to come at you throughout this hallway. It will slow up a little bit when there's too many things going on. Always can use that to your advantage. I recommend picking up just a few extra health items potentially for the end, just so you end up making sure you have plenty of health going into the boss fight. Take out the little dinosaur right before the heart, and then get ready to battle it. All you're going to do is throw your boomerangs or weapon up into the air right at the heart. Watch out for the rocks that come down. Thankfully they're easy to dodge because they always go the same direction. The only thing you really got to worry about though, and potentially can damage you, is the other enemies that start showing up. Pterodactyl and the other dinosaur. Just take them out when they do show up, and then focus right back on the heart. Once it's taken care of though, you can enjoy the ending to Joe and Mac on the Nintendo Game Boy. Yep, there you have it, Joe and Mac on the Game Boy. Interesting ending, and an okay version of the game as we put in our name and high score table. It then goes to one of the cavemen laughing and the credits scrolling underneath. Are you a fan of Joe and Mac? Which version in particular do you have the fondest memories of? Is it the arcade version? Is it the SNES, Sega Genesis, NES, or heck, maybe the Game Boy one? Did you have this one on road trips and ended up having some memories with it? As the credits finish up though, it goes back to the title screen and you can start the game all over again. But with that, it will wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.